Oh, hi there. Good evening. Uh, Tonight I'll talk about my opinion on the Ukrainian Russian situation. Um, the Brits and the Americans have decided, regardless of what Russia does, they will not send in any kind of military personnel to the region. Um, you know, behind the scenes there's a lot of people arguing, and it's a state of chaos. Yet nothing has happened yet. Who's to say? You don't know what could happen. My offhand opinion is that I don't believe the Russians are going to invade Ukraine, and I'll get to explaining my reason why. But first of all, I have to state a few things. One, this is an important one. Chernobyl, Soviet Union's fault. Russia's embarrassment. They look completely incompetent to the world. Now, a few decades later, they look at it now and go, well, we've been working on our nuclear cleanup program, and we think we can do a better job than the West. So they want to correct their mistake. Now, don't get that confused with the Russians, doing this out of the goodness of their heart. It's about saving face. Um, Chernobyl is in the northern part of Ukraine, and Ukrainian military has said that they believe the Russians are massing there because it's the shortest route to Kiev. And by the way, I don't like the new spelling of Kiev, relatively new spelling. In my opinion, it should be Kiev, like the way it was before. But anyway, not important. Um, I actually don't think the Russians are particularly interested in that. I mean, you look at the geographical location and the historical value of Ukraine, and really there isn't much there for the benefit of Russia. And all the problems economically on the world stage that it would cause for the Russians far outweighs so many things. But, I mean, with the nuclear disaster that happened there, I mean, who's to say that some of that radiation didn't find its way, over to Russia, making it Russia's problem as well, as it should be. I mean, the philosophy 30 odd years ago was to leave it be and try and cordon it off. And, I had heard stories of wildlife returning there, and stories, actually, Shane Smith from Vice, he did one which was good. It felt incomplete, but it was good. And basically, there was like a kind of like a dead zone where you go in there and it's certain death. And a lot of animals go in there, like wild boar, bears, all sorts of things, deer of sorts. And, they may not necessarily stay there, but they could be there longer than the designated safe period of time to be there because they're animals and they don't know. And then they run off, and who knows where they go, and they probably take what bad news they got with them. Um, Arguably, that's as bad as COVID, and that is another point I will bring up. Um, Part of this is it's fun to move armies around if you're a general. It shows your military might. It rekindles the old feelings of the old empire, and the fact is, they haven't done anything yet. They're just there. And it demonstrates to the world that their military is disciplined, obeys orders. It has, you know, not gone into the um, crumbling of rabble, of no unit cohesion. The United States, as portrayed by the media, uh, take it for what it's worth, appears to be very divided. Very, you know, the government is not in control of itself because there are different factions with different opinions going in different directions, and it's not a single unified government. Joe Biden is a very weak president. Regardless of what you think of Donald Trump, Joe Biden is a very weak president. And that's not necessarily his fault. That's the circumstances of the American situation. So many different complicated ideological opinions and philosophies that through either business relations, powerful force, or the military, or big tech, which is part of the financial institute, and all that sort of stuff. It's very hard to control a bunch of people that aren't particularly stupid. I mean, people watch the news and they go, "Oh, I can't believe how stupid the Americans are." Are you there? Did you? Were you in the Houses of Parliament? Do you know what Boris Johnson's doing? Do you know what he said? Maybe you got a snippet of it on the television. Maybe you read something that anyone could have written on the internet. But there's a lot of heavy conversation going on behind closed doors that I was saying, and there's a lot of chaos. And it was about COVID, but when you think about it, nuclear radiation from Chernobyl, arguably as bad as COVID. And most definitely an embarrassment for the Russians. So, you know, they're probably unsatisfied with the West, you know, and their plan on fixing that situation. They probably feel as though that they could do a much better job. They're probably working on it for a long time, figuring out solutions. So, you know, sure, they might head to Kiev and switch it up with a more pro Russian government. That's possible because the Ukrainian government is very anti-Russian, if you didn't notice, and they have a lot of good reasons for being so. But they're not actually very good at running their country. There are a lot of slums. They're a very poor country. A lot of bad things happen. It's not really a good place to invest money in, so it doesn't draw in international bankers or anything like that. There's corruption everywhere. We get back to the unit cohesion, and you know, with Russia's demonstration that it wants to restore its place back into the world as a dominant power, as some would even dare say the Soviet Union in recent years, the Soviet-style march for the victory against Germany it was gone for a while. Now it's back. It's mostly a mock-up. The Soviet Union's not what it was before, but the bitter feelings are still there from previous generations, like that are, you know, obviously they're still in positions of power. Obviously, they have some of them have kicked the bucket, but a lot of them haven't. And you know, a lot of tensions are based on persons in power and their own bias. for whatever reason they may have. So, when the Russians and Ukrainians don't get along, it might be because Grandpappy doesn't like the Grandpappy over on the other side of the border, and they had a long, dislike of each other, and it's that didn't really go away because they're both still in power. I mean, the Soviet Union collapsed, but some people within the Soviet Union hierarchy didn't go away. They just kind of went into the background and kept quiet. So, again, what does this have to do with COVID? Well, it's taking the power of COVID away from the Chinese Communist Party. That's a term that you don't hear that often in Western media. There is China Uncensored, of course, on YouTube. Highly recommend Chris Chappell. He's a very talented man. Anyway, but aside from him, you don't hear much blame game about the coronavirus and the Chinese Communist Party. But the thing is, a very interesting point was made on a video. It's more of a young adult sort of thing. It's not super intelligent, but it's, it could put some ideas in your head. And that would be Binkoff's. I haven't watched a Binkoff episode in so long. Basically, he's a sock puppet who talks about hypothetical wars. It's quite entertaining, actually. And he pitched the idea that the Chinese are put in a spot where they're not in control because they don't know exactly what to do. It's quite often associated that the Russians and the Chinese are, like best buds. They're not. Both countries see themselves as the dominant power in the region. They're not friends. That's a Western myth. Maybe at some points in time they've colluded with each other, but they don't particularly like each other. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's not just the schism that happened where there was actually a fighting war between those two countries a few decades past. Look it up. That happened. And the figures of how many casualties there were it's a lot lower than you think, or I should say a lot higher. They've lowered it artificially. A lot more people got unfortunately were casualties in that particular war. That doesn't really get called that. It kind of gets called more of a differencing of opinions on just certain things. But yeah, look it up. So anyway, China's in a position where on the world stage it's supposed to be buddies with Russia. It's not really. So they could either support the Russians or just, say, good on you, Russians, which would make them look bad and would be an excuse for the Western powers to further dampen relations with China, and the European Union especially can use that as an excuse. On the other hand, the Chinese can say nothing, and that's also not a great move either, because the Western powers will just use that as an excuse to go, it's causing problems for the West, so it is benefiting the Chinese Communist Party. Therefore, seeing as the Chinese Communist Party already benefited from our problems with COVID, in case you forgot, saying nothing doesn't make them look good, and they are of the understanding they can't exactly totally burn every bridge that they have. So they can't go, we condemn what Russia's doing. Um, Theoretically, I mean, I suppose they could, for business interest, try to revive, um, their economy with European powers, because the Russians will use that as an excuse, that they're being anti-Russian, and there'll be more friction between those two countries because of that. And Russia as a country, although it did get COVID, it didn't get COVID particularly bad. The restrictions were not particularly harsh, and this is totalitarian, at least used to be, and probably mostly still is actually, country, and they, didn't really lay down the hammer, or at least it wasn't made public. It's not. You ask your average every Joe Canadian, and they would know offhand what it was like in Russia during COVID. I'm sure there are plenty of instances where it looks like they were benign, and then other instances where it looked like they were draconian. I'm sure there's a bit of both, and it's very deceptive. I mean, a lot of countries are. You get an off opinion about things, but if you haven't actually been there and seen it, then unless the voice is overwhelmingly saying one particular thing and they're showing examples of what's going on over there, and you're getting reports from people who are actually there who are backing this stuff up, then you don't really know. So, on that hand, maybe the Russians won't condemn the Chinese as bad because they don't want to get the COVID. Worse. Because right now, this is not a new story, but it's the one that's starting to gain momentum, which might mean the COVID talks begin to subside. I mean, it's fairly obvious to a lot of people that the Russians did not want Joe Biden becoming president. They didn't want him becoming president because he would return to more of an Obama stance. Obviously, as his former vice president, he would do. Even if Joe Biden doesn't have the mental capacity to think of what to do, he can always go, "Oh, Obama, can you help me out?" And Obama will be like, "Be right there. I'll talk to them Russians like I was, back when I was president." And, this is getting back to the unit cohesion. The Republican Party is still split. There's the Donald Trump supporters. There's the Republicans that never liked Trump. And, it's still, it's like a big pushing and shoving match. So yeah, I mean, like, it is an important event, but you look at people's faces, you hear what's going on in the news, and it's like, for the Ukrainian people, this is a very serious situation. They don't know what's going to go on. They're not a particularly sane country. They have a lot of poverty issues and a lot of other corrupt problems. And part of it is their history, but also it's general bumbling of the government of being able to control things. And that's not nice to say. I would rather not have to say that about the Ukrainians. They went through a lot, and I think that they deserve to be treated a little bit better. Now, did the European Union accept them into their organization? No, and there are plenty of reasons, because it would cost quite a bit of money to fix up that problem and have them not be, kind of an embarrassment. It would also overlook the Russians, which, when it comes to countries, they use their ability to be offended as a manipulative tool to further their own political goals. And, when you think about it, the Ukrainians, like, why would some of them care if the Russians retook the Chernobyl area and decided they'd clean it up? As a hypothetical, I haven't heard anyone say that, but I suspect that's what it is. It's to clean up the Soviet Union's old mess and save face to the world. So why does Ukraine care about that? Why don't they go, you want that radioactive monstrosity of a mess that you created? You deal with the friggin' problem. You'd think that, and what if in the Ukrainian internal government that there are some that do think that? So, it might be another, little war like the Crimean one where very little military action is actually taken and the Russians get what they want because, let's face facts, the military power of the Ukraine, we're not even just talking about manpower, but, just their technological, their statistical abilities to be able to do things, their strategies, everything that makes an army, the Russians are better at. So they're not only a much larger country, a country that's much more wealthy, a country that pours more money into its military, they're also just simply better at doing everything in that regard. And that's not fair, but that is what it is. So at the end of the day, who knows what's going to go down? But the Ukrainians are, they're quaking in their boots, and they have a right to be, and I don't think it's fair. But I do think the Russians should clean up their own mess, and if they have advanced scientific know-how to do that, then you spend the money and you clean it up. Then if you can do it so well, and then don't start grabbing territory just to look like the big tough guy on the block. Anyway, leave it at that. Some food for thought. And I will talk to you people next time. Have a good night.